Welcome to In the Office Cast with Jon Kent and Adam Scory, a podcast about business culture, technology, and solving the challenges and misconceptions surrounding hybrid and remote working.
Hello, John. Welcome back to another podcast. It feels like ages since we've done one of these together.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah, we should probably do some more. Get it on a regular schedule.
Yeah, we probably should actually. Yeah, but we've got lots of guests, haven't we? I mean, I'm just in the process of editing our number 3 and 4 for series 2, so episodes 3 and 4. And I know you've got planned quite a very interesting chat with somebody about cybersecurity.
Yeah, well, not just cybersecurity, but also physical security and how that's been affected by the shift to more hybrid working and working everywhere. So really interesting conversation. We had an initial chat last week, and I think it could be one of those episodes that will be a couple of hours very easily because it's really interesting.
Well, I guess this one is we've both been inspired by this and wanting to chat about this for a little while, but about just this whole compressed hours debate that, the new government's come in and said, we introduce all these new things. So I guess it's important for us to wade into this, doing what we do, and have a chat about just thoughts and what we've read, inspiration, disagreement, whatever the case may be, and have a chat about it. What do you say to that? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I know I have quite strong opinions about some of these things. So, which is really interesting. I mean, I also I can see it from not just the sort of the salary people, but also, wage workers and wage earners and people who are also potentially more vulnerable where some of these things will really affect them. So, I really wanted to join this chat with you as well, because it's just
brilliant.
Be interesting to find out if our views align or if we're actually polar opposites on it.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah. Well, I know we're not afraid to have those discussions anyway. So, John, should we just start with highlighting kind of the key bits then that the government have said around the employment rights that the government have suggested? Because it includes a few things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's 4 or 5 things I think we've got on the list. So it's things like ending 0-hours contracts, day one rights, strengthened sick pay, flexible working, stuff like that. And then this compressed hours piece fits into that, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. It's probably important to note that it's very clear. I think in the manifesto before they even were voted in, they were saying that they want to push flexibility. That's the key is flexibility and strengthening employee rights. So I think that's quite good. The right to request compressed hours or right to request flexibility from day one, they're all really interesting things. I question whether or not it needs to be legislated, personally, because it's let's look at the compressed hours one, for example.
Yeah.
What they're talking about there is that people can, rather than working 8 hours a week, 8 hours a day, over 5 days, it's doing the same number of hours, but over a fewer number of days. So obviously working longer on those days. So the idea is that it's not going to affect the employer at all, because they're still getting the same number of hours worked, but it means that then people have potentially a 3-day weekend.
Yes. Which, in fact, Emma that I interviewed just recently, she's now a fractional CMO. She has set up her fractional CMO to work only 4 days a week because she's wanted that long weekend. It's a lifestyle choice for her. So, and I know this has become, there's lots of discussions going on about this. And there were studies in, was it Finland? That was probably the study that was the one that people refer to most around, one of the happiest countries in the world, apparently. Offering a 4-day week. And I think was it 25,000 employees, public service employees, and they tried the 4-day week, and apparently it was a raging success. Other countries have tried it, I believe, and has not been quite successful. But I think different sector of work, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be all doom and gloom about this, but I also question when you do these. And by the way, I'm not against compressed hours at all. I think if it works for you, then absolutely go for it. The issues that I always find with these studies is that they say, "Oh, we did this study, and yes, productivity increased," but there's also, that's while you're doing the study. There haven't been or can't be the long-term effects. So, when something's a novelty, you get that coffee shop effect where, when you go to the coffee shop the first time, you go, "Oh, this is brilliant. I get so much more work done. I feel really productive." And then you do it every day for a year and you go, "Oh my God, I just hate going to the coffee shop. It's so loud. There are always babies crying and I can't have calls and all of that." So I always say with these studies to take them with a slight pinch of salt, that it might prove successful, but generally you should be trying it. If you're a company and you're going, "We might try doing 4-day weeks," you need to try it within your company rather than thinking, "Oh, this study said it's going to work, so therefore it's going to work for us."
Yeah, I think that there's always those caveats, though, isn't there, around, if it was 4-day week for people who have got a very hands-on practical job. I mean, obviously, if you're a plumber, for example, you can choose to do that. But I think a lot of companies that have got tradespeople, for example, or factory workers, that might be a very difficult thing to do. They might end up having to employ more people and the wage bill goes up. But does that mean that the productivity goes up? For me, I think one of the key things to this is actually we talk about the big P word, productivity. And I do wonder just how many people understand their own business's productivity, whether they see KPIs as productivity or whether they actually have done studies on productivity within their own business.
And how do you, exactly as you said, how do you measure it? Is it the bottom line? Is the business making more money, or are you producing more outcomes, or so it's very different. It's very difficult. Yeah.
I mean, I made a list of the things that they're talking about, the key changes for compressed hours, and it's things. There are 5 things on the list here. I'll just read them out. So there's the right to request flexible working from day one, which has been in for a little while anyway, hasn't it? That came in. Was it April this year?
Sometime like that. I know we've talked about it before on the podcast as well.
We have. So you have the right to request flexible working, including compressed hours from the first day of your employment. Increased requests, so employees can make 2 statutory requests for flexible working within a 12-month period, up from the current 1 request. I mean, I can see your point about actually mandating this. It feels a bit like school. Anyway, faster decision times. Employees must respond to flexible working requests within 2 months, reduced from 3 months. Okay, makes sense. Consultation requirement. I mean, they could probably do it in a week, to be honest, but anyway. Consultation requirement. Employers are required to consult with employees before rejecting a flexible working request. And then removal of impact explanation. Employees no longer need to explain the impact of a flexible working request on the employer and how it might be managed. Interesting. So, I mean, I guess after we've had the pandemic and we come post-pandemic, if we're having to mandate this, I think it kind of feels like, first of all, you're bolting the door after the horse has run a little bit. Secondly, it feels like they're trying to be popularist by going, "Oh, let's jump on the bandwagon." But hang on a minute. Well, let's jump to actually rather mix my metaphors. That saddling that horse when it's in the field running around is going to be very difficult, right?
Oh, I'm really pleased that you went back to correct it to align the metaphors. That's brilliant. That's why people come and listen to us. Consistent metaphors throughout. You're
Mr. Metaphor
right.
Man. Perhaps that's a superpower of mine. I'm Mr. Metaphor. I need a cake.
Metaphor Man. I think you're completely right. I don't disagree with any of the changes that they're proposing.
Yeah.
But like those 5 points that you read out, surely that's just running a successful business means when someone makes a request, you don't just go no. You say, well, actually, this is the, can we have a chat about it? Why do you need this? Because maybe the suggested flexibility that the employee's wanting actually won't work for either the employee or the employer, but having an open conversation means that they can come up with a better solution. So I personally, I feel like there are many, many more important things that the government should be focusing on in terms of employment,
Yes,
rather than how do we make sure that people are flexible.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think we've established now, but businesses should be able to determine that for themselves. I think personally that, and this is the sort of dangerous Venn diagram overlap where the government's reaching perhaps a little bit too far because they want to be popular, or trying to create a popular or mandate a popular feeling that really doesn't need mandating. I don't think.
Yeah.
I understand maybe the sort of the request for flexible working and having it increase request. I kind of get that bit, to being able to say, yeah, definitely you should be allowed to do that. But again, it's all relative, right? Because if a plumber goes, oh, I want flexible working, I want to work from home 3 days a week, please.
Yeah, exactly. And what we were talking about earlier, the idea of going to a car showroom to buy a car. If the sales guys are saying, well, actually, I want to do compressed hours, actually, maybe that will work because they could stay in the showroom earlier during the week, but you need people there at the weekend to show people cars, and to, that's it's a core part of their job. So having that as a right, having that as a legislated right is probably just going a bit too far for me. And I think if we actually look at what that means, so obviously for the employee, it's good for them to have a right so that they can feel like they can go and say, I'm putting in a request for flexible working. It's important that they know that they're going to effectively be protected by the law. So if the boss turns around and goes, can't believe you asked for that, you're fired, then they've got protections. And it's same with the right to not be unfairly dismissed from day one as well, whereas it used to be, or currently is, 2 years, which is up a year from a while back when it used to be just 1 year, that you earn the right to not be unfairly dismissed. Excuse me. That's all really good, but then I think also if you take a look at it from the business perspective, so if you've got a business and no one's working on compressed hours, for example, what does this request actually mean in terms of your business? Potentially you're going to have to get more staff, so increased wage bill. You're going to need to, even on a really basic level, change the way that you're giving holiday and paying for holiday. Because if you're an employee and you're working 5 days a week, you can accrue holiday in days, for example. So you get statutory minimum of 28 days, which includes the bank holiday days. If you've got someone working compressed hours, that all changes. You have to now start calculating it in hours. And this, as I said before, bless you. As I said before, these are the areas where I think actually this should be sorted out by the government. Like holiday pay, especially for the most vulnerable, who are the wage earners in retail and hospitality, where they don't have consistent work. Trying to work out how much they should be paid and how much they should be paid for holiday is an absolute minefield, and tends to not be understood by the companies, and also definitely not by the actual workers themselves. So focus on that as something that's worthwhile solving in my head, rather than trying to insist people are flexible.
Do you know, I agree with you, because my daughter, she worked in hospitality for quite some time, actually, going through university, and she had a dickens of a job. The managers themselves were not trained properly. They didn't know how to do this. It was just kind of an on-off, underpaid, overpaid, all over the show. Didn't know when she could take holiday. She was on a 0 hours contract, which the government obviously saying they want to get rid of. And I think that's probably a good idea in many ways. Or to ensure that if you do have a 0 hour contract, that is in the benefit of both parties rather than just the employer, which it seems to be at the minute. Certainly from my daughter's experience. So I mean, it's I guess that's the point, really, is that the vast majority of people at the bottom of that kind of pyramid, if you like, because CEOs don't really need protection from this or worry about flexible working, right, on the whole, if we're generalising. But it's, the us everyday workers that have got to turn up at 9 and go home at 5, and earn a crust, as it were. They're the people that need better, a kind of more adaptable system, I guess.
I just feel like we're legislating to protect the most vulnerable, which is important that we do it, but doing it for everyone means that it's not going to. It's worthless.
I think you're right. I think it's an overkill. They're trying to fix a problem that doesn't really exist. I think if they were, there are more important things. I think around holiday pay, parental pay. I think enabling dads to be off time as much as mums. When people have children, statutory sick pay. I mean, seriously, employers not paying sick pay. I mean, there, better rules around there, clarity, supporting people who are long-term sick, that kind of stuff. It seems to me that we've been sort of dragging ourselves more towards the American style of employment, where you have to top up all these benefits that you're not getting from your employer with private system, medical care, healthcare, mental health care, physical health care. It's all, it all just seems to be kind of flittering away these, kind of looking after people. Okay, I suppose you argue we are a socialist country on the whole, very liberal. But some of the things that the elements that they talk about in this being, better work-life balance, reduced commuting, increased productivity, improved morale and retention, cost savings. Interesting to know where they got that from.
I have to say I'm not sure about the cost savings, because it's like the biggest problem with flexibility is the increased cost and work, because it's always going to be more difficult for everyone if everyone's working flexibly. Like, we're very lucky that we work pretty flexibly.
We do, yeah.
It's basically just get the work done. But if you've got, and it's okay because it's two of us, if we've got a team of 50 where everyone's working all over the place, that does create more cost, because you need to organise that, you need to manage it. Just one of the big problems about working from home is, and I know a company that I used to work for, everyone was working from a desktop computer, so a big PC tower. And of course, as soon as you go work from home, everyone then has to have a laptop. So massive increased cost. You then got to manage the devices as well. You've got to provide all sorts of protections for that device, insurances, everything like that. This is all additional cost. So
it is, yeah. One company I worked for, they paid £50 a month towards my internet provider.
There you go.
So again, you think you've got 100 employees, that's £5,000.
Yeah.
A month.
Yeah. And that's straight away. So obviously working flexibly, I do believe, has huge benefits, but let's not pretend that it's all happy days for everyone. There is always going to be an extra cost to the employers, and some employers won't be able to afford to do it.
Yeah.
So actually legislating it is potentially, putting smaller businesses that are on a shoestring the whole time out of business because they can't afford to work in that way.
I mean, I've got a list of 10 elements, I suppose. It'd be interesting to perhaps, I don't know if we get through all of them, but if I take the top 5, for example: work-life balance, productivity, employee morale, recruitment retention, cost savings. I think we've probably kind of done cost savings now, but if we take those top 4, so work-life balance, compressed hours can improve work-life balance by providing employees with an extra day off each week. I think that's a little bit of a simple way to look at work-life balance. Is that's going to solve all your problems because you only work 4 days a week.
Yeah, I mean, I on the flip side though, I think not just going compressed hours, but thinking about working flexibly, where you can go, well, actually, I do have care commitments and things like that.
Yeah.
That can be very important. So, I do agree that work-life balance is obviously positively affected by this, but by being able to work more flexibly. But it's a bit of a generalization, isn't it?
I guess if we were coming at this from 2019, if we were at 2019, I think we probably have a less jaded approach. I think I'm a bit jaded by this whole work-life balance thing from the point of view of having compressed hours. I think working 4 days a week is important to some because they have commitments. But I think, as you say, the most important thing is actually the flexibility to choose. regardless of what it is, whether it's working from home. Actually, when you work, it is almost, I know we work this way, but sometimes I'll start work at 10 and finish at 10. Sometimes I'll start at 6 and finish at 2. But it depends on what I've got to do on that day to move the needle. So I've got the flexibility to choose that, and then sometimes come back a bit later on when I've made the dinner for the family, or I've walked the dogs, or I've gone and just had a bit of downtime, come back, feel refreshed, and go, actually, do you know what, I'm going to do a couple of hours, because there's that thing in my mind I've been noodling on. So I think flexibility is more important than having compressed hours. I think you're right. That's what I would say about this work-life balance piece.
And it's the, as you nailed it there as well, it's the opportunity to choose. But obviously, if we're meant to be meeting up because we've got a conference or something that we're exhibiting at, and you go, oh, I'm going to work flexibly today, it's like, well, actually, no, that doesn't work, because the job that we've got to do today requires us to be in a specific space at a specific time. So it can't. I think that's one of the underlying sort of themes that I get with all of these changes, is that it's all on the employee and giving the employee as much freedom as they can possibly have. And actually, we have to appreciate that they still have to do a job. So there are other people that will be affected. So if you've got one person who's able to work compressed hours, what does that mean? What's the impact on the rest of the team? Because that might mean that, the office has to stay open for longer during the week, which might mean that then you've got the office manager who then also has to stay a bit longer. It's never, you can never look at these things in isolation.
No. And the other thing as well, just things like, does it mean that, because most people are going to say I want a long weekend, right? So it'll be a Friday or a Monday. So does that mean that the vast majority of businesses that have the ability to offer this are going to shut down Fridays and Mondays? Or do they move? Some people go, do you know what, I'm going to love when it's quiet and there's no one in, I'm going to go in Fridays. I think that's great on Mondays, whatever the case may be. Generally, people hate Mondays. Because it's loads of stuff happens over the weekend, because businesses run 24/7 now. So it's like, I don't know. I'm torn with this. I love the idea of being able to choose. I love the idea of being able to certain people to say, look, 4 days for me is going to work. Better work-life balance, and more personal time for family, personal development, all this kind of stuff. So I get that day. How many people actually do use that day off for that, or do they just do the washing?
Yeah. But also, is that something that anyone else should be worried about? If you do compressed hours and you have a 3-day weekend and you just sit around in your pants the whole time, then fine. I suppose, it's like, it's a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it? It's trying to go, right, well, during the pandemic, everyone worked from home and people were putting in much longer hours. And so we're going to give everyone the right to work flexibly, and we're going to say it's an increased work-life balance, because then we're basically saying you can stop working on these days. How many people do end up working anyway? How many people are
I would take this even a little bit further and say that I think this is potentially part of a bigger problem, and we're actually not solving. We're almost solving the symptom rather than curing the problem. And curing the problem, I think, is there's not enough people, companies, we've got used to the fact that we're trying to do 2 or 3 people's jobs rather than doing one really well.
Yeah.
I think we've got this the wrong way round. I think, yes, there's, we've got really good low unemployment at the minute comparatively, but I wonder whether we are just trying to do too much as an individual. We don't understand productivity. We've said yes to things, and 20 years ago, and it's just accepted now that your job has expanded and expanded and expanded because we've got smarter, we've got technology to help us with all these things. We've become more efficient, but has that made us more effective? So the problem is rather than talking about, let's compress our hours, it's actually, why don't we just do one job really well and have another person to do that other job? Would be more effective that way. So I wonder, I've got no evidence to back this up, but I do wonder whether the problem is we're trying to do too much, and that's the issue. That's the core of it.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that's another one of their pledges, or one of the things that they're trying to put into the employment rights bill, is the right to switch off, and the right to not be contacted by your boss after hours, which is I get, because there are people that, and there are particular bosses as well that, don't respect
all of those.
your time. And you're on holiday and your phone bleeps and it's your boss calling you saying, "Where is this file?" You're like, "Well, open your eyes and look, you lazy." There's, so I get that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that probably is a more important way to do this. But I mean, also, is this even going to be an issue going in the very, very distant future? Because, everything seems to be showing us that we're moving more towards a gig economy anyway. So, people being able to do multiple jobs where people are basically contractors. And, you do a job, you get paid, and then you go, "Thanks very much. I've learned a skill and I've worked with these people, and now I'm out." So would we need any of these rights with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I thought you were going to say that Elon Musk's going to sell those robots for $20 each, and there's going to be 10 billion, 100 million of them, and we won't have to do anything because everything's done for us. And we'll all be trading Bitcoin and.
Isn't that really contradictory to his main beliefs that if you're not sleeping in the office, then you're obviously not being productive and working?
Yeah. So. But he's a walking contradiction, though, isn't he? This is the guy that thinks hybrid working is for lazy people and it's tantamount to you're a shirker, and yet he's the guy that's got 5, 6, 7 companies, 10 companies, and so he's a hybrid worker in all of those, surely, because he can't be at all of them all the time.
Yeah. Oh, and now he's working for the government as well, isn't he? He's the Minister for Efficiency or something like that. Going to cut trillions from the wage bill over there. I mean, that's a whole other podcast, isn't it? Yeah, it's something that I can't remember what it was, but it's
that is a whole other podcast, because that's just my brain is just lit up with oh my god.
So I think one of the really important things to focus on with all of this is not focusing on the benefits or the drawbacks, but actually what's going to happen in the real world.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing is that we've shown that, or I can clearly explain how this is adding more obligations on employers and increased costs on employers. And the good employers out there will obviously completely abide by this and will have to suffer those additional costs, whether or not it's actually appropriate for their business. So that's just, there are employers who will follow the letter of the law. The people that this is meant to be protecting, who are the most vulnerable, tend to be employed by people that have questionable methods. So the people that this is meant to be meant to be helping, probably won't get the benefit because they either won't understand it or the employers will work a way around it. Yeah. So, the whole thing about statutory probation periods and the right to not be unfairly dismissed and things like that. A lot of these things can be and will be either contracted out, for example, like the fact that we're not meant to work more than, the statutory maximum number of hours in a week, which is 40, I believe. And you get a line in your contract that says, well, you're actually excluding that because you're contracting out of it, because if you want the job, there are requirements where you might be called into the office more than that. So I don't actually think that it's worth spending time pushing this through to have it as a law, because the people it's meant to help, it won't. And the people that will implement it are just going to have to suffer with additional costs.
I guess also from a philosophical point of view, who decided that work is 40 hours a week?
Yeah.
I mean, does this come from, kind of back in the Industrial Revolution times where it was, they worked a lot more than 40 hours a week, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So who decided that? Who says that that's right? What about job shares? I mean, teaching is a really commonplace in teaching to have job share roles. So, and this comes back to my point around, perhaps a better thing to do would be to create a deeper study from lots of different sectors and go, actually, what is this work thing that we're doing? Where are we heading with it? Because we're fixing problems as they arise rather than planning ahead.
Yeah.
We've got a very. We're all in this structure of, right, we work every week, we work X amount of hours a week, and we get paid based on either per month, per week, per hour, a day. So I do wonder whether there's a new way to kind of understand the way that we work is actually more important than where and how, in a sense.
Is it sort of reflective of the, dare I bring it back to this again, but the conversation about hybrid working, where you've got the people, for the majority of people who are just getting on with life, they're going, well, we're kind of doing a couple of days in the office, we're kind of doing a couple of days at home, we'll work it out between us because we're grown-ups. You don't hear about them because they're just sort of getting on with it. The people you hear about are the extreme ends of that. And are we going to get the same sort of thing where it's just, well, we've got to, the people who are shouting the loudest are at the extremes and then completely disagree with the other side. So, that's effectively government, isn't it? You've got two sides who have to take polar opposite views rather than, so you end up with the worst of every single world because that's the only thing you can compromise on.
Whatever race at the bottom it is, they're both on the same track. It's like we're just heading to the bottom. It doesn't matter about being more intelligent about this and working together. I mean, imagine that, a government working together on a problem.
Wouldn't that be good?
So what I've done, John, in preparation for this is just list what I think are some of the pros and cons that have come to mind, really, for this compressed hours. So where do you want to start? What's your vibe? What do you think?
Let's try and be positive. So let's focus on the pros first.
All right. So top of my list was a supposed better work-life balance for compressed hours. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's giving people an option to have more time away from work. I was actually just thinking, Emily, my wife, is on compressed hours. She does 10 days into 9. So every fortnight she'll have Friday off. And and it's definitely, for her, she loves it because it means that, every other week you've got a longer weekend. So, and she's very good at not accidentally working on those days. Her work phone stays in her office and that's it. So I think that's definitely one of the benefits of just being more flexible, really, isn't it? It's not necessarily just the compressed hours, it's flexibility as a whole means that you've got more chance to draw a line in the sand and go, right, this is now my life rather than work. Definitely.
I would agree largely with that. I think it kind of depends a little bit on the individual and how it affects the family. If, say, mum is working compressed hours and she's at home on Fridays, does that mean she gets all the crap jobs because dad's still at work? Or is it vice versa, of course? But so I guess from a coming at it from a family man with children, then I would say interesting. I guess it's down to, as you say, Emily's really good at not doing work and using that time effectively. So it comes down to being effective at using that time, or laying in bed and having a lie-in, or playing on your PlayStation or whatever the case may be, whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's something that for her as well was quite hard to drill in to begin with. It was, she, thinking back at previous jobs for both of us, we would work longer hours than we were being paid for, and there would always be more work than you could achieve. So it's definitely taken her a while to. She was, before this, she was just doing 4 days a week. So and I think that at the time, and she was a contractor, so it wasn't it's not a salary job, so it was very much well, if I'm working on a Friday, I'm not being paid for it. So if they want me to work, then they need to pay for it. It's probably quite a good idea in that case to have come from that contractor background rather than the always being seen to be working.
Reduced commuting was the next one that I had down. Fewer days to commute, save time and costs.
I mean, I guess again, that's if you're then looking at, say, hybrid working where you get to work from home a couple of days a week, then you're getting that benefit there as well. So, commuting is, I can't remember what something about embracing hybrid working, I think, is equivalent to like an 8% pay rise.
That's the number I had in my head as well. That's, the studies done in America. I think it was a saving of $49 a day for the average worker going into an office because of childcare, pet care, food, travel costs, etc., and hours and hours of travel that are wasted in effect.
I mean, it's definitely I would definitely say that is a benefit for exclusively for the employee, obviously.
Yeah, I would say so. Now, this is probably going to be a bit of a thorny one. Increased productivity, longer uninterrupted hours can enhance focus and efficiency. Do you think that is going to be a measure of productivity? The fact that people have compressed these hours and they're going to try and... It's not doing more because you've got the same hours in effect. It's just... It's moving the goalposts rather than making them smaller.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it also comes down to how you're measuring productivity. Because, you're saying we're doing the... the great thing about compressed hours is you effectively, for just a bit longer each day, you're getting a full day off and it's not affecting your pay. So from that perspective, that's really good. But I wonder as well, thinking about the counter argument, those days where you're just a bit sluggish and you can't, and I know we've talked about it before where, I'll just be staring at the computer going, well, I'm kind of now waiting for 5 p.m. to roll around so that I can then feel like I've done a work day. Whereas actually what I should be doing is shutting the computer, going for a walk and maybe taking the rest of the afternoon off and then doing some more work tomorrow to, if I need to make up or whatever, however I want to sort of run that. So if you're committing to longer hours on a particular day and you're just not being productive that day anyway, having more time in front of the desk isn't going to change anything. So so that was,
we haven't all got the same
negative thing to think about.
We haven't really all got the same measures, have we? Because salespeople have got targets they've got to hit, marketing people have got stats, kind of the stuff that is the website. I guess developers have got certain tasks they've got to tick off their list every single day, either as a small team or a larger team. So, but in some jobs, it's how lawyers how do they determine what's effective in a day? For example, I'm choosing that because you obviously got deep connections with
billable hours, I guess.
Yeah.
So
from their point of view, but in terms of they're supplying supplying a service to their customers, and what about jobs that are perhaps a little bit more, because some jobs you just turn up and you do, right? You just there is no way to necessarily measure productivity. It's just a job that you do.
So and also I think you mentioned before, if you're someone that gets into the flow of what you're doing and can work, then having a couple of extra hours or some extra time in a day means that yes, you can continue that without having to stop and start. But if you're someone that can't just sit in front of a computer and produce work, then that's you're not going to get the increased productivity there. So I guess, like with everything, it really depends on the person and the job you're doing.
And things like employing tactics like time blocking, for example, to maximize the opportunity. When it's quiet in the office, what can you do that means you're not going to get interrupted? Because when you are there, then maybe you will get interrupted. So it's you not just eating your frogs first thing, but choosing the tasks appropriately.
Yeah, definitely.
Next on the list for pros was improved morale and retention, high job satisfaction and loyalty. I think there have been some studies to say that, I don't know whether it won't be compressed hours, but certainly having the flexibility does support retention and helps with increased morale. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's the ability to do something other than just the 9 to 5 grind 5 days a week, isn't it? So
it is. Do you think it's a mind? For me, this is a mindset thing where it gives you the ability to go, I recognise I am not on my A game today. I don't want to give D game, and it's okay for me to say, look, as you've just expressed, I'm going to break now. I'm going to stop because there's no point in me going any further. I just can't. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not in the right mindset. There's nothing I can do, so I can take a break, a walk, or something. So I think it's knowing that that's a safe thing to do, and it's not going to be written down somewhere by somebody going, you took an extra 2 hours, because you're not being watched in that way.
But and I think the thing is that's that's very much not about compressed hours. That is just about, because compressed hours is obviously, it's the 4 days a week rather than 5. So you're doing extra hours during the week. What we're talking about there is more flexibility, and I think it's very important to highlight that as well, because it's one of the reasons why I find it strange that this is a topic that's being highlighted as we're pushing for compressed hours, that everyone has the right for compressed hours. It's like, actually, just it's a form of flexibility. If you've got compressed hours but you have to take Friday off, you can't switch it around, then you lose all of that benefit, and so your morale and retention might not be a pro in that case.
There were stats that Emma, in the podcast I had with her, something like the people that were I can't remember what the business she said it was now, but something like the forced return to work, 73% of the employees that are being, in this particular study that she read, I think it was a Forbes study, said that 73% of the employees that are in that situation were looking for new work because they're being forced into 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So that's dangerous territory. If that's, Forbes don't mess about. So that's not not going to be some study of 20 people around the office. So what would happen if we told you? So that's going to be quite a few thousand people that they've. So that's an important one, and certainly in terms of hiring talent, retaining talent, that must have a dramatic effect on the mindset of the person going. If you've got 2 jobs in front of you and that salary's slightly high, but you've got to work 5 days a week in the office, and it's a bugger of a commute, to that one's 8% less, using the example you just explained about. But it gives me that I choose when I'm in the office and out. I have flexibility of where I work and when, etc.
And I mean, the main thing for me in all of this is it should be down to choice, but also you need to keep that flexibility. So if there was an option, I mean, the best scenario in the world would be that 1 week you go, you know what, I just really want to have a longer weekend because I want to go away somewhere. So this week I'm going to do compressed hours. Next week I'm going to do 5 days because actually I've got appointments in the evening or something like that, but I want to work from home on Monday and Wednesday because on Wednesday I've got to pick my kid up from school or something like that. And as long as it then works for the rest of your team, if you've got that flexibility so that you can keep changing, and if your company's embraced the flexible working from its core, not as a sticker that it's putting over, a plaster, that it's putting over this wound, then you can do that, and then that's the absolute best scenario. But I think it's important that with everyone, if you're going on about compressed hours, it's not that level of flexibility. It's literally just 4 days, not 5 in the office, or 4 days working, not 5 days working.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the final point in the pros, as it were, and I see this one, sits on the line actually, cost savings. This sits between pros and cons. I think reduced operational expenses for employers. I guess, yes, if you're shutting down, if everybody's on the same compressed hours and you're able to completely shut an office down, so no one's in on Fridays, then that's not going to affect the business with customers. I guess in that sense, they're not making phone calls, they're not using company cars, they're not turning on electricity, using air conditioning, using the office, coffee, lighting, all that kind of stuff, I guess is what was in my mind when I kind of thought of this.
I mean, I guess with that as well, though, that's assuming that everyone's doing the same compressed hours, so that you can then close the office.
Yeah, but I guess those costs are kind of pushed into the home instead in some ways, because you're just moving that into the.
Well, I guess for the employer's perspective, you don't really care about how much someone's spending on their electricity at home because they need to have their heating on because they're doing a 3-day weekend. But yeah, I feel like that might be oversimplifying it a bit. I think there's probably in the majority of businesses you will need you mentioned it before, you will need the cover. So one person might be on having Wednesday off, one person might be on having Friday off, or it might change. So you're probably going to have the same cost, just fewer people in the office.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're doing compressed hours from the office, obviously.
I think the key to that one is if you're able to say that everybody's on the same framework. That's the bit that would make that really work, wouldn't it? Maybe you could as well utilize the office differently, and maybe there's spaces in there that you could hire out for other businesses or to sublet, of desk and working spaces, because we're fast becoming you don't have a desk at work kind of scenario. So okay, let's move on to cons then. So I've made a list of 4 of these. So I've got longer work days, childcare challenges, scheduling challenges, and then I think not so much health and safety, but I guess it's kind of health and well-being, I suppose is probably a better way to describe it. So longer days, extended hours can lead to fatigue and reduced productivity towards the end of the day.
I mean, we kind of touched on this, didn't we? It's the exact opposite of the increased productivity, because it's some people might be fine and some people might not. So, yeah.
Well, I guess the other part of that as well is from the point of view of that may come into scheduling issues, but longer work days, are your clients, if you're client facing, or if your job is reaching out to clients, maybe in a sales capacity, if people aren't about, particularly in a commercial setting, you're going to be ineffective. But again, if you're time blocking, it enables you to go, well, I'm going to do activities when my clients are not about, or people I need to talk to are not about. It could be IT response or something, and go, well, it gives me an opportunity to do some of those really boring jobs that I hate to do, admin and stuff like that, fill out expenses or whatever the case may be. So okay, childcare challenges. Longer hours increase childcare costs and complicate pickup times. This is a real issue, I think, for a lot of people, because you can't then, if you want compressed hours, turn and go, I just need to leave at 4 because I need to come, or 3:30, need to go and pick up my kids. Are you coming back then? Yeah,
I mean, I think it sort of highlights the fact that you can't just look at this in isolation. It has to be with other flexible elements, because you can get around that by going, well, yeah, you're leaving at 3 to go pick up your kids, but then and you can cook them dinner and put them to bed, and then you log back on.
Yeah.
So but you have to have that flexibility in order to achieve that.
Yeah, I think this is what the pandemic's given us, is the opportunity to look at the working day as not so much a period between 9 and 5, but maybe it starts at 8 and finishes at 10, but you have breaks, lots of breaks in between, because life gets in the way and you do things. But that just enables you to be perhaps more effective.
Yeah, I think so.
I think from my point of view, I think my kids are 15 now, so, and the older ones they've got their own car, so it doesn't bother them, but we don't really pick them up. I think there are only odd occasions that this would affect us with older children. I guess people with young children that are at nursery and play school and stuff like that, where they finish at 3 or 2:30 or something, this would be a bit of a bugger. But as you say, it comes down to that flexibility to go, well, I'm going to take half hour out to go and get them. That's a bit of a break for me. That's okay.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, thinking about if we expand it from just childcare to be care responsibilities, that might not just be at that time of life where you've got young kids. It might be that you've got aging parents or someone that you've got to look after, in which case having the longer days, would that be a negative, or would you then be benefiting from going, well, actually this way I can have a full day where I can just dedicate time to them? So you can struggle through on the 4 days a week, but in a scenario where that's what you're doing. But yeah, so I it's a pro and a con, I think.
Yeah, I think it is actually. Yeah, this is probably one of the biggest ones. The next con being scheduling issues. It's difficult to schedule meetings and ensuring adequate coverage for businesses, particularly if you've got teams spread out around the country, or again, people are missing a day a week in actually being available, should we call it? So yeah, I think this is probably the biggest loss potentially. I mean, this is. I know we're not here to promote our software, but this is where having a tool where you can actually understand where people are and when they can't be contacted.
Yeah.
Centralized, cloud bit of software that can be on your telephone. So it's like, oh bugger, where is John today? I can't remember. Oh, hang on. Bib.
Yeah.
This comes down to being good planner, having a tool, having a centralized system.
Yeah, and I think it's also it sort of touches on the cost savings, where I was saying I'm not really sure it is a cost saving, because in order to do this properly, you have to have really good communication, you have to be organized, and it has to be embedded in the culture of the company that this is what's happening, and it can't just be for one or two people. It has to be that this is available to everyone, provided the job that you need to do you can do your job around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to have that level of organization, which is where it is more time, it is more effort. So there will be additional costs to the company for doing it. And I genuinely think that's the main reason why there are return to office mandates, because that saves money and reduces complexity.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it makes it really simple, because you don't need to ask that question anymore. Where's Bill? Where's Jenny? They're there all the time.
Yeah. Or if they're not there, then they're obviously on holiday or
very binary.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think there's an element of this. This is retrain the system into if you are compressed hours. Also, so that it's kind of a positive too, in the sense that yes, there will be scheduling issues, but it then maybe dedicates or makes you really be more efficient in the times that you are planning to be together as teams. So again, you collaborate, perhaps it's a bit more focused with the collaboration, because you know that people aren't in on Fridays, whatever the case may be. So I think this is, again, both a positive and a negative for businesses and for teams and for managers. And again, I mean, this, as we've already said, this isn't going to work. The compressed hours isn't going to work for every business anyway.
No. But I guess here, if everyone has the right to request it, there obviously will be scenarios where it won't work for some certain people's jobs or certain business types. The right to request it, that's obviously important. But yeah, the companies, this again, what we're saying is you can't go into this and go, oh, so Joe's requested it, so therefore, we're going to have to do it, and we'll just do it for Joe, because that's easy to manage. It's got to be right. If we're actually going to do this, we have to really think about what we're doing. Yeah. Which scenarios? You shouldn't, thinking about it, actually, like the process. So one of the rules that they were changing was the 3 month. So the employer has to tell you within 2 months, not 3 months. Realistically, that shouldn't be a discussion or a plan. It should be, the company should have a policy so that the employee can go, I know that I can request compressed hours because here's the policy, I fit within it, and off we go. It should be that clear. So actually having
it really should. I mean, it puts pressure on the HR office manager, teams, managers, leaders, whatever the case may be, but that would surely solve quite a lot of those issues, I think.
Then also everyone knows what's expected.
That's true.
That's what we keep talking about. That's why we say, well, planning out for your, as I said, not trying to plug our software, but planning where you're going to work in the week ahead means that everyone knows, so that there are fewer surprises. Rather than just turn up and, so-and-so's not turned up to the office today. Well, that's annoying because I commuted all the way in to see them and they're not here. Right, well, I'm not going to do that again. Or they're not here, right, in which case we've all got to be back in the office 5 days a week because it's the only way I can trust people. Yeah.
Presentism.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's move on to then the final point I made was around sort of physical and mental well-being, because this could potentially, I mean, this kind of touches on longer days as well. You're kind of asking a lot of yourself to be. The compressed hours means that the days that you're contemplating work, you're kind of putting pressure on yourself. They've got to be done within those 4 days. So in already a pressurized environment, are you adding deeper stresses onto yourself? If it's harder to schedule meetings with It could be with agencies. It could be with, you don't work the days that somebody who's really important to a project.
Yeah.
They're either there or not there, or you can't meet them, whatever the case may be. So are we asking too much of ourselves? Is there too much of a demand on our physical and mental health by compressing? I already said previously about, one of the sticking plasters covering up the core issue of potentially we're trying, just as humans, trying to do too much rather than have, we're all doing 3 jobs, for example. So actually, why don't we do 1.5 or just 1 and have more people working around us and be much, much happier? So anyway, a deeper point. But so how would you reflect on that around the mental health and well-being of actually the pressure we're going to put on ourselves by doing this?
Yeah, well, when you were talking about it then, it was making me think about some friends who have, they've gone off and had a baby, and then on the return to work, they've been doing 4 days, and that's a proper 4 days, so not being paid for 5, not compressed hours, but a proper 4 days. And the comments that I'd always hear back from them is, all it means is I still have 5 days worth of work, I just have to do it in 4 days. So they're kind of already doing the compressed hours, but they're not getting paid for the extra day. So it generally then was, well, I might as well go back to 5 days, or the other way, I've got to go to 3 days, because then people know that there's no way I can do that same amount of work.
Yeah.
So it's funny, because as you say, talking about that, I was like, well, yeah, there is that. Well, you do 5 days worth of work anyway in 4, but you're just not paid for it. So this is almost like a positive from that, because it's highlighting that people obviously can and should then get paid for the extra day. But having said that, I think you're right, because the stress of work, of trying to fit that much work in, and long days, you could probably argue that some of us are doing it already. And, people do turn up to the office at 7 a.m. and don't finish till 7 p.m. And this is just allowing people to get paid for that sort of extra time. But I think it's what we've already experienced with hybrid working is that loss of connectivity between the manager and their team. And if you're now doing compressed hours, it feels like you've dropped 1 extra day where you can have, potentially feedback or learnings or whatever. So it's causing it's sort of stretching that connective tissue, I think. So,
it connected with that actually. While you were talking about, I was thinking about, what about the, if you don't turn up, your last day is a Thursday and you're not back until Monday, but then your boss or somebody who you work with is not in till the Tuesday. That's a big gap where you're not connecting, where you're not able to communicate with somebody. Is there a danger that you're going to become a little disconnected from projects, and you're almost having to not start again, but you're having to kind of warm yourself into them again before you start again? So there's that kind of a crescendo into it every single time now, because you're not on it in quite the same way.
Yeah, you're not sort of doing the gradual drip feed of getting work done. It's right, work crazily, and then you're off. I think it's also important to note that we seem to be defaulting in this conversation to sort of 5 days into 4 as the compressed. But obviously compressed hours can be anything. So it can be if you usually do 2 days worth of work, but actually you're now doing it in 1. God, that'd be terrible, 16-hour shift. But it could be that every month you have 1 day off, so that it could be any sort of combination of those types of compressed hours.
That's interesting, isn't it? Sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say that's interesting, that, because could you in theory do your week in 2 days? I mean, that's really compressed, right?
Well, yeah,
if you're doing a 37.5-hour week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got Tim Ferriss, who famously wrote the 4-Hour Working Week book.
Yeah.
I can't. There will be jobs, obviously, that you could potentially do like that, but I can't imagine in the creative world that would work as inspiration can strike anywhere. And
I wonder if employees, I wonder if CEOs, managers, bosses, etc. would accept that. Go, actually, you can do I don't mind how compressed you become. So you can do your 5 days in your 3 if you want to. I don't mind.
Yeah.
I mean, where do we go? I mean, what?
Yeah,
then it comes down to, it's got to be about outcomes, right? It's got to be about what you're actually producing at the end of the day. Are you meeting the needs of the business? And if you're independent, I mean, I don't know, the last 4 businesses that I've worked in, they've all said, if you're happy and you've done what you need to do, and it's 3 o'clock, you've made all your calls. This was talking about a lot of the sales teams, to be fair, but if you've made all your calls, you've done all you can, you've hit all your targets, you're on top of everything. If you finish at 2 and go and play golf in the afternoon, I don't care. That's what certainly when the last company I worked at were very much like that. You crack on, but that's on the basis that you're producing all the time anyway. So that's not going to happen every single day, but the odd days here and there, I guess. So
and I think there's also another element in that as well, though, that you have to know exactly what you've got to achieve in that day in order for that to work, because
absolutely.
If it's just making me think of there was a MasterChef, the Professionals, I think it was, where anyway I can't remember which version it was, but there was a guy in there who was making, I think, a chicken burger or it was something in one of the early rounds, and he put it all together and then stood back and crossed his arms and was like, right, well, I've basically done it. I'm just now waiting for the chicken burger to cook in the oven. But I've cut everything up. I'm it's basically ready to go. And the Greg Wallace and John Trode, yeah, I think so. Anyway, walked over and said, so tell me what you're doing. Is it ready? He's like, yeah, I'm just work smarter, not harder. And they were like, afterwards, they said, yeah, but he didn't. He could have used that time to make some mayonnaise or something like that. And actually, it's really disappointing to see someone go, well, mediocrity is fine. I've done everything I can do, so I'm just going to sit back, rather than, this is an opportunity where I've got some time. I'm not stressing and tearing my hair out, so I want to do something. I want to make the final product even better.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because the sense there, what you've said there, is the fact that because they'd done what they needed to do, it was seen as you're missing an opportunity, rather than the mindset of going, great, brilliant, I love it, and encouraging. Isn't it funny how you kind of, what missed opportunity? You could have.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I guess in that scenario, it was a competition as well. So going, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with my first draft. I'm not going to read it through and proofread it. Is sort of where
me,
we're going.
I can't be asked to polish the turd, so.
Well, yeah. I'm not even going to roll it in glitter. But I think. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, no, go on. You're fine. You go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think going back to the sort of health and mental health aspects of this, it's something that needs to be carefully watched, and I think it's not just necessarily with the compressed hours; it's across everything, which is something that we're not necessarily doing enough of, but it probably can be enhanced with the idea of compressed hours.
Yeah, I think we're on unknown territory with compressed hours. I think in many ways. I mean, not that the compressed hours is new; it's been around for a long time. I think the mindset around compressed hours has always been there. Oh, I'm taking Friday off because I've done everything I need to do this week, and I can do with a bit of a break. A lot of good companies will allow employees to do that already. So, but I do think there needs to be more data on it. I think we're only just getting to the point that we understand our own mindsets around our own neurodiversity and talking about how office spaces could be changed to fit the task, because rather than just be a desk where everyone's got a desk, you just come and sit. Rather than John's gone into the boardroom. Why is he in the boardroom? Is he job hunting or something? That kind of no. He's whatever. So I do think a lot of this needs more data. I think there's a ton of data over the last 4 or 5 years now of the pandemic. I don't know whether that's, for me, been delved into enough to understand. It seems to be the objectives are around returning to how we used to have it, because that's what we understand, rather than understanding the new way of how it could potentially get better, and then going on from there still further, which would compressed hours for me is a branch off of flexible working rather than
absolutely it's caught
So-
under the flexible umbrella, which actually I mean, being a bit dismissive of the government's push for this and the legislation and stuff on that. One of the things which I do think is the ambition, which they say which is good, is that flexibility should be the default and not the exception. And I think trying to get to that is a good, ambitious intention. But I'm still not sure you should be legislating against it. No.
I think on balance, I'm the same too. I think what their intent was, obviously when the policy was written, it was probably a couple of years ago, a year ago, whatever the case may be. So it's maybe I'm being cruel to current government, perhaps, in just saying that this is the one they probably went, oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
That'll get a few votes. On balance, I think, they've just a point I've made. For me, just summing up really from my point of view, I think it shouldn't be legislating. I think a lot of it is common sense. I think we're way past needing the legislation for compressed hours, but certainly flexibility. I think that more work could definitely be done there, more research, and hoping that companies will open up that data and be able to share it with the government and go, this is what we've learned. Why don't you? And maybe it's something for the future that by putting this legislation in, the next step is actually easier. So
maybe, I mean, it's it's a nice thing that they're trying to do.
Yep.
But I still, in my probably quite grumpy view of it, the companies that will abide by it are probably already doing the stuff that they're talking about. The companies that won't, who are the bad employers, I think they'll still find a way around it.
And on that note,
happy days,
Well, we did end on the cons.
But
well done for trying.
Yeah. I think it's the weather, isn't it? It's making everyone a bit grumpy.
Yeah, I think so. This time of year, I think we all need sunshine. That's what they need to do. They need to bring us sunshine, the government. Can you do that, please, Mr. Starmer?
Yeah.
Mr. Starmer, would you mind?
Yeah, good luck with that.
Thanks again, John. Appreciate your time. I know this one, we've gone round the houses a bit with this, but it was a kind of one of those subjects that was, I think we knew the answers before we started, but it's been good just to kind of talk through some of the things that were in our minds and thoughts. But ultimately, the writing was on the wall before we started. Yeah,
I think so. But as you said, it's some other things have come out though, and it's always good to discuss this because you suddenly go, oh, I was really against that, but now I can see there are some positive.
Yeah. Pleasure, John. Thank you very much.
Yep.
And see you on the next one.
Sounds good. Cheers, Adam.
Bye.
Bye.
John and I really hope that you enjoyed and really got something meaningful from our latest episode of the podcast. If you'd like to comment or reach out to us and share your thoughts and ideas, we'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you would like to be a guest and we'd interview on our podcast, we'd love to have you on to talk about all the challenges that coming back into the office, the cultural elements as IT, HR professionals, office managers, and of course leaders as well. Please also do like and subscribe, and then it guarantees you get our latest podcast in your inbox. Thanks again for listening.